Chapter 32. Kai. No! The word tears from my throat as disbelief and disgust claw at me, threatening to rip me to shreds. Jax doesn't make a sound, his eyes wide and locked with mine. Silent tears slip down his cheek, clinging to the thick lashes that surround those big, brown eyes. He looks at me, horrified as he begins to tip backwards on his knees, unable to stop himself from falling in his final moments. Not him. It wasn't supposed to be him. Never him. I grip his shoulder and the back of his head, carefully lowering him to the ground through my blurry vision. I swipe at my eyes, trying to compose myself as I inspect the wound. The throwing star is embedded deep into his chest, blood oozing out from around it. Dark, heavy blood that isn't stopping, isn't slowing, the type of blood that accompanies a goodbye. I did this to him. He's gonna die because of me. Because I'm a monster. I physically shake my head, trying to clear it of the horrific thought and instead focus on the horrific scene before me. Hey, look at me, Jax. Okay? Buddy? My voice is soft, shaky, but his eyes find mine nonetheless. I can see the wound already leaching the life from him. His eyes unfocused, his breathing shallow. You're gonna be fine, all right? His eyes flutter closed, and I pat his cheek, forcing him to look at me, to stay with me. Do you hear me? You're gonna be okay. My eyes well with tears, the feeling foreign as I blink furiously. I'm gonna fix this. My voice breaks just like I'm about to. My little brother. The sound of the elites fighting around us suddenly comes into focus again, and I can hear the clink of weapons and the cries of pain. Everything floods back. I remember why I'm here, what is going on around me, and who really did this to Jax. A cold, chilling laugh echoes close by. His laugh. I whip my head around, scanning the field for any sign of the bastard that I will make bleed and brutally die for this. But he's nowhere to be found. I hear his laugh again, coming from only a few paces away. Nothing. No one is there. And then it hits me. He cast an illusion on himself. The bastard molded himself to our surroundings, wrapping his body in an illusion that makes me see nothing at all while letting Jax play his role. If it weren't for my dying brother beneath me, I would scour every inch of this field until I found Ace, and then I'd rip him to shreds, slowly. Jax grunts weakly, his eyes drifting shut. My gaze darts to his wound. If he doesn't get to a healer, he will die, and it will all be my fault. My heart hammers against my chest, my head spinning. There are no healers among us for me to draw power from. Jax's head rolls to the side with a soft moan. My little brother, my little brother, my little brother. I look up at the sky and find the sun peeking back at me. It has almost fully risen above the horizon, and when it does, we'll be free of this trial. My eyes land on the crowd of people less than a mile from the chaos all around me. There will be a healer in that crowd. I wipe away tears that I don't remember shedding and pull Jax into my arms, and within the next heartbeat, I'm standing up and running towards the throng of people. Jax is barely breathing now. He might be unconscious, I'm not sure, but I sprint as fast as I can towards his salvation. I push Braxton's brawny ability into my muscles, making Jax significantly lighter in my arms and allowing me to run faster. I don't need to make it all the way to the crowd, only close enough so I can latch onto a healer's power and use it to save him. Jax! I shout at him. He barely stirs. Jax, just hold on a little longer. I'm panting, petrified that I'm too late, but the crowd of people is getting closer, and I can see them pointing and shouting as they watch me sprinting straight for them. And then I begin to feel it, a tingle spreading through me, my bones, my very veins. It grows into a buzz before it becomes a roar and a rush of power. There are so many abilities at my disposal, provided by the crowd still dozens of yards away from me. I feel overwhelmed as I search for the healer's ability within the wave of power crashing into me. There it is. I focus on it, hone it, and shut out all other abilities fighting to come to the surface. Lying Jax on the ground, I drop to my knees at his side. I ignore the fact that I don't see his chest rising and grip the part of the throwing star still peeking out of his chest, needing to pull it out before I can heal him. If you can hear me, Jax, this is gonna hurt like hell. Sorry. And then I yank. It rips from his skin with a sickening sound. He doesn't so much as stir. I ignore the dread pooling in my gut and place my hands over the now exposed, opened wound. I let the healer's power seep into his body, the gash, and begin mending and molding the skin back together. I recall learning to mend each wound my father inflicted on me as a boy and push that power into the boy beneath me. The blood stops. The skin knits back together, leaving nothing but a large pink scar decorating the center of his chest. But he isn't moving. Jax? I pat his cheek lightly. Nothing. Then shake him vigorously. Nothing. Now I'm shouting shakily. Jax? My voice cracks as he lies there, lifeless. My fingers frantically search for a pulse. No, 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 no. Little brother. Little brother. My little... His eyes fly open, and then he's gulping down air. I half laugh, half sob as I watch him blink, his hands flying to feel the smooth skin where my throwing star once was. He looks around, his brown eyes landing on me. His grin is weak, his voice hoarse, but humming with humor. Are you gonna try to kill me again? I croak out a laugh and run a hand over my face, wiping away the tears on it. I'm not planning on it, bud. And then I'm pulling him against my chest and crushing him into a hug, my hand ruffling his hair. The sound of beating drums startles us both, and we turn towards the crowd not too far from us. They are cheering, applauding, stomping their feet in celebration. The sun has risen just above the horizon. The first trial is complete.
Chapter 33. Payden. Thousands of eyes pin me to the uncomfortable seat I've been forced into. The bowl is packed to the brim with buzzing Ilians, all bubbling over with excitement. The last of the audience has filed into their seats high up in the benches of the stadium encircling us, now staring down into the pit beneath them expectantly. It's been 3 days. 3 days since the final fight at the edge of the Whispers. And there are only 7 of us left. I hear the stomping of impatient feet coming from the crowd around us, and my heart trips at the sound. Suddenly, I'm back in that clearing, the sound of thundering feet morphing into the pounding of drums, signaling the end of the trial. But no one stopped. The drums meant nothing to us. We were all still at each other's throats. If it weren't for Andy's help, Blair would have torn me limb from limb and scattered whatever remained of me across the field for the birds to feast on. But just because she didn't kill me doesn't mean she didn't leave her mark on me. Several, actually. Marks and mangled flesh that the healers had a hell of a time mending back together. It was as if none of us saw the risen sun or heard the drum sound. We were ravenous, refusing to simply lay down our weapons and surrender to each other. The flashes made it to us first, weaving around in between us. Then the Brawnies arrived, using force to pull us away from one another. I was rudely ripped off Blair after finally managing to pin her down, and was thrown over the shoulder of a burly man before being carried through the gawking crowd. But I wasn't the only one. The opponents around me were all being hauled away and shoved into separate coaches to cool down. It wasn't hard to figure out why the king wanted to break up the fight and cut us off before we could do any more damage. Since it is forbidden to fight another contestant outside of a trial, keeping our anger stifled will only ensure that the rest of the trials will be even more interesting, even more bloody. I'm suddenly sucked back to reality, remembering the stiff chair I'm sitting in, the stiff dress clinging to my body, and the equally stiff contestants beside me. I shift in my seat, my arm brushing against the hard one that belongs to the prince I haven't spoken to in days. I run a hand under my rib where I can almost feel the jagged scar given to me by the same boy who was almost the cause of Jax's death. I sneak a glance at Kai beside me, cool and collected as ever, despite what happened. Or so he seems. I've gotten quite good at pinpointing the cracks in his masks, picking apart his facade. I suddenly realize that Tiala is speaking to the crowd, gesturing at us with excited movements. I don't care enough to listen to what she is saying, but the crowd is eating it up. They love these trials. It makes me sick. Now for what you have all been waiting for. I finally decide to pay attention to Tiala's words as she amplifies them across the arena. As you all know, this year's purging trials will be unique. She gestures to Kai, clearly indicating that he is the reason for this. Another test for their future enforcer. She continues with a flash of her blindingly white teeth. And because of that, the first trial was outside of the bowl with no audience to witness it. The crowd murmurs at that, clearly unhappy that they couldn't witness the violence. But do not fret, citizens of Ilia, Tiala exclaims enthusiastically. You will still get to watch the highlights, but without all of the boring bits. She laughs, and the crowd joins her, rumbling the stadium. So, here is the first trial in the 6th ever Purging Trials. The audience roars with excitement before falling silent as we all shift in our seats to get a view of the enormous screen at the far end of the oval arena. Recordings flicker to life, snippets of each of us, provided by the line of sight standing below it. I watch myself and every other opponent wake up in the forest, confusion and concern written on each of our faces as we read the note left for us. I witness Blair's fight with Andy before the scene cuts to Hera, sinking in quicksand she stumbled into deep in the forest. She's screaming, eyes pleading with us. No, with the sight standing idly by. She vanishes from the screen, and I'm suddenly staring at Kai. But he's not alone. He's brawling with Braxton by a fire, trading punches in the dim light before burning each other with the flames. The crowd cheers and quiets, claps and stomps while watching the trial as though they were there. I'm silent, still, stiff-backed, like my opponents beside me. We are watching ourselves fight to survive. Suddenly, my own face flashes before my eyes, and then I'm watching the horrors of those illusions all over again. Kit's dead body floating lifelessly in the pool, the starved little girls begging for help, myself begging for help. I see the terror on my face, see myself crumple to the ground. The body sitting beside me shifts, and my eyes drift slowly towards him. My gaze crashes into Kai's, ignoring his clenched jaw and taut brows. It's his cold eyes I focus on. I've never seen a stare so icy, yet so full of fire. The look in his eyes is chilling, and I shiver. It's like icicles, his gaze. Pretty but sharp, cool but deadly, captivating but cutting. He doesn't break my gaze, and I swallow. Then he's saying something, though his mouth doesn't open. My head whips to the screen, and I'm watching myself strain to hold my bow up with the pain of my wound. I watch Kai rush over to me as I crumple to the ground. Watch something like worry cross his face as he tries to keep me awake, tries to keep me alive. I glance at him again, but he's focused on the screen, not bothering to return my gaze. I hadn't realized he could look at me like that. Look at me like he cared. It frustrates and flusters me all at once, but I can't seem to tear my eyes away from the scene playing out before me, playing out before the entire crowd. I hadn't realized just how often the sights were watching us, and my face feels hot, as most of my conversation with Kai while he stitched me up is blasted for all to hear, and the crowd is loving it. I swear I hear a collective sigh each time Kai touches me or says my name, accompanied by murmurs of jealousy for that very reason. I watch Jax blink from tree to tree, and then Andy and him together, screaming as dozens of snakes surround them. I watch Hera stumble across Blair before a sloppy fight ensues, one where the latter is mostly yelling in frustration because she can't find her invisible opponent. Kai and I are back again, and this time, I'm nursing his wounds. The crowd buzzes as they lean in to hear our teasing. I throw a glance at Kai beside me, who doesn't bother to look my way, though the corner of his lips twitch, telling me he finds this amusing. Flashes of each opponent over the days flit across the screen, fighting one another while fighting against the dangers that inhabit the whispers. Kai and I are back too soon and... oh, plagues no. Thankfully, the sight only caught the very end of our dance before Sadie interrupted, but it's enough to get the crowd hollering with delight. I can't say I blame them. Too much bloodshed can get boring, and this is quite the unexpected twist. Their future enforcer is giving them quite the show. I stare down Kai, who is, to my annoyance, smirking now. My voice is hushed and highly agitated as I say, "Why didn't you tell me there were sights around?" His eyes finally flick to mine, causing my heart to hammer against my ribcage. Stupid, stupid organ. He leans in so close that his lips brush the shell of my ear. I was a little distracted. I will my pounding pulse to slow and force my eyes away from his, turning my attention back to the screen where I watch myself fight Sadie. And then I watch her die all over again. It seems that a sight failed to catch Kai burying her, though part of me wonders if that was intentional. The king would have likely found a decency such as that to be a weakness, a flaw in the enforcer he's created. So the kingdom will never see that shred of kindness Kai showed. It seems that secret solely belongs to the two of us. There's movement flickering across the crowd as the audience around us presses their pointer and middle fingers together, the symbol hovering over their hearts. A diamond. Ilya's image of strength, power, and honor. They are paying their respects to the fallen. The contestants beside me do the same, and the crowd is silent, utterly still until the final fight at the edge of the whispers lights up the screen. Blood. So much blood. The scene is utter chaos, and I have no idea where to look or who to focus on. The angle switches back and forth between different sites, documenting the fight, focusing on different elites. I watch each of us battle against one another, out for blood and those bloody bands. Then I finally get to see how Hera died. I knew she didn't make it out of the trial alive, I just didn't know why. The sight focuses on Braxton, blood leaking from a stab wound, as an invisible knife pierces his skin repeatedly while he roars in anger and anguish. Hera stabs him in the side, and he screams, reaching blindly to grab the invisible knife. His fingers wrap around the hilt, and he pulls it out, flipping it around before stabbing wildly in front of him. I hear the sickening sound of steel sinking into skin and bone, before Hera is flickering into view in front of him, the blade buried in her small chest. She blinks up at him with tears slipping down her face, before buckling to the ground. Triangles are being pressed against hearts for the dead girl, as the rest of the final fight flits across the screen. I barely watch Kai running towards the crowd with Jax dying in his arms, before the scene cuts to one last shot of the elites, covered in blood and bloodthirsty. And then the screen goes dark, and the crowd is only silent for a breath before erupting into applause. I barely hear Tiala as she begins speaking to the cheering audience, thanking them for joining us in watching the first trial. "Oh, and don't forget," she practically squeals, "your vote is more important than you know. Honor your kingdom, honor your family, and honor yourself." The crowd recites the motto with her, and then they are free to leave. I watch hundreds of people shuffle between the rows of benches and through the wide tunnels leading out of the bowl. They toss their votes into giant glass bowls beside the exits as they pass, not realizing the power they hold with the name they scribble down. I hate the lack of control I have, or the fear constantly following me. I hate feeling so helpless, so powerless, so ordinary. I am competing in games meant to flaunt the powers and strength of the elites. The powers I don't possess. Yet here I am, alive. And I intend to keep it that way. Someone is following me. I was heading back to my room after dinner when I suddenly felt someone close behind. I whirl, my hand flying to the hilt of my dagger on instinct. My eyes meet wide, startled green ones before I quickly avert my gaze. "Easy, Peyton," Kit laughs, raising both hands in surrender. "You're jumpy today." I turn on my heel and begin walking down the hallway again. "Well, don't sneak up on me and you don't have to worry about getting stabbed." "I have a feeling you'll stab someone for less than just sneaking up on you." I can hear the amusement in his voice, coding his words. The hint of a smile has me ducking my head to hide it when he falls into step beside me. We're heading down the hallway towards my room when a firm hand grips my wrist, and I'm pulled into one of the many hallways branching off to my left. I open my mouth to object, but even with his back turned, Kit senses it. "Don't stab me yet. I want to show you something." He tosses a grin over his shoulder as he leads me through the maze of hallways. I've finally learned my way around the main corridors, but when it comes to the dozens of small hallways scattered throughout the castle, I'm completely lost. Kit easily navigates them, winding in and out of different corridors, passing other sections and rooms of the enormous castle I've never even seen. I'm sure he could find his way through the palace blind, a skill that only comes with growing up in this maze he calls home. Golden sunlight warms my face when Kit pushes open a large wooden door at the end of a hallway, nodding to the Imperials guarding it before we step out into the balmy evening. My breath hitches. I'm surrounded by color, by life. A wide, stony path lies before us where several others branch off, all surrounded by hundreds of flowers. The gardens. It's beautiful, breathtaking. Living in the slums, surrounded by dreary alleys and dull colors, I'd nearly forgotten how bright the world can be. Every place the cobblestone isn't touching is teeming with flowers and plants of every kind and color. Pops of fuchsia and royal blue stand out among the pale yellows and lavender. Statues litter the garden, dark vines clinging to several of them. It's the neatest kind of chaos I've ever seen, with rows of flowers crowding around the paths, creating a railing of blossoms and foliage. Each of the stone walkways loops in a large circle, creating several rings around the massive fountain at the heart of the garden. I've never seen anything so bright, so vibrant, and I have to blink rapidly, nearly blinded by the colors bombarding me. Between my blinks, I can see Kit watching me curiously, intently. He clears his throat and takes a step onto the path, guiding me beside him. "I promised I'd show you the gardens one day." My eyes sweep across the flowers as we slowly walk along a path. Kit is content to fill the silence by telling me of Kai and his adventures in this very garden, pointing to the statues they've toppled over or the fountain they couldn't resist taking a dip in. I snort at his stories despite my best efforts and clamp a hand over my mouth to stifle the sound. I stop abruptly, throwing caution to the wind when my curiosity gets the better of me. Why? Why do this? Why do what exactly? He's trying not to laugh at me while I'm trying not to hit him for that exact reason. Take me out here. Tell me personal things and... I stumble over my words in frustration. I dare a glance into those green eyes that match the foliage around us when he slowly says, "With the future that I have, it's hard to meet people. Really meet people. Get to know them. Most of the people in there," he points towards the stone wall of the castle, "they want something, and they'll say whatever they think I want to hear to get it. But you..." My dry laugh cuts him off. "But I tend to say things I likely shouldn't. And I tend to enjoy hearing those things," he says softly. My eyes wander over the flowers rather than meeting his gaze. "Then I will keep that in mind the next time I wish to tell you off." I bite my tongue as soon as the words tumble out of my mouth. I may say whatever I please to Kai, but this is the future king. If I wish to keep my head, I'll have to learn to hold my tongue. But the boy beside me only laughs, seeming less kingly by the second. "Good," he chuckles, "because I have something to ask, and I expect nothing but brutal honesty from you." I swallow. There is nothing honest about me. The trial, he says slowly. Your thoughts? I choke on my scoff. That was certainly not the question I was expecting. My thoughts? You mean other than the obvious? He stops walking to take a step closer to me, dwindling the little distance between us. And what would the obvious be? My eyes are pinned to the top button of his shirt, so I don't have to look into his father's eyes. That these trials are a twisted way to celebrate a tragedy. And there I go again, biting my tongue too late. But there's something about this prince that makes me reckless, makes me want to tell him exactly what is wrong with everything he thinks he believes. Tragedy, he echoes, his voice even. You mean the purging? Yes, the purging, I breathe. The banishment of thousands of people and the continuous killing of them that follows. I'm practically spewing treason, but I can't seem to stop now that I've started. Those are your people, Kit. Innocent people who are still being killed today because of something they have no control over. He stares at me while I stare at his collar, avoiding his gaze. The purging needed to be done, Peyton. You know that. His voice is gentle, while mine is anything but. Why? Because the ordinaries are diseased, supposedly weakening the elite's powers, even though they lived alongside the elites for decades? He blinks. You think they're not diseased? I am playing a very dangerous game. I clamp my mouth shut, knowing I've said too much. To answer that question truthfully is a risk even I'm not willing to take, so I take a breath before hurrying to change the topic. I just think that as the future king, there are a lot of things you need to think about. I don't look at him, but I can feel his eyes on me. And you're going to enlighten me about those things? Enlighten me about my own kingdom? Play the part. Play the part. Play the... I bark out a bitter laugh. Don't be an ass, and don't pretend you know your kingdom. Have you seen the slums? Seen the segregation? The starving citizens? Your starving citizens. So much for playing the part. I throw up my hands, shaking my head at the flower beds. Would you even listen to me if I tried to enlighten you? Tried to tell you to make a change? He stands there, silent and still. So I ask again, voice urgent. Well, will you listen to me? His hands are suddenly cupping my face and guiding it towards him as I fight the urge to flinch. If I listen to you, will you look at me? My breath catches in my throat. Look at me, Peyton. Please. It's the softness, the pleading in his voice that has me taking a breath and shutting my eyes for a moment. When I finally open them again, I see so much compassion and concern filling his green gaze. And for the first time, I allow myself to study those eyes, because they have never looked less like the king's. The warmth in them washes over me, overwhelms me. All this time, he says quietly, I've been searching for a gaze you wouldn't give me, waiting for you to want to look me in the eyes. He pauses to take a breath. Why do you avoid my gaze? Avoid me? So clearly, I've done a terrible job at playing the part. I swallow. You reminded me of someone from my past. But the more I get to know you, the more different the two of you seem. I study him for a moment, surprised by my honesty. The king and his heir may look similar, but in this moment, they've never seemed less alike. He smiles softly at me. Does that mean you'll start looking me in the eyes? Only if you start listening to me, I reply with a small smile of my own. Deal, he says simply, before we slowly begin to head down the path once again. I have a question for you. I almost laugh, and I likely have an answer for you. He smiles before his face is suddenly serious, and he tucks his hands behind his back as we walk. In the trial, Ace made you see me. And at the sight of me dead, you seemed... He shakes his head, searching for the right word. I'm reminded of how he watched that scene play out on the screen in the bowl, saw the look on my face upon seeing him, heard the scream that tore from my throat. Upset? I say weakly. Terrified, even? For once, I look at him until he meets my gaze. When I saw you dead, I guess I suddenly saw all the potential you have die with you. All the potential to be a better king for Ilya, to make changes, to rule how you should and not how you are told. We finally made it to the center of the garden, where we stopped beside the fountain. Now that I'm finally willing to look at him, Kit's eyes don't seem to want to leave mine. Thank you, he says with a smile. I know I can always count on that brutal honesty of yours. You're the first real person I've had the pleasure of knowing in a while. I almost laugh at that. If only he knew. I'm a liar and a deceiver who used him as my partner so I could get the people's attention. I stand before him as an ordinary, one he would have killed if he only knew the truth, and I would die by the hand of his future enforcer I'm too stubborn to admit my attraction to. And in the end, it wouldn't matter how real he thought I was. But I offer him what I hope is a sweet smile. Before turning to face the beautiful fountain that is so large, I now understand why the princes couldn't fight the urge to swim in it. I lean over the edge, peering into the crystal water reflecting my face back up at me. Shillings. There had to be hundreds of them, just casually lying at the bottom of the pool. I recall how I felt on my first night here, after seeing all the wasted food. I feel sick. So much money lying idly. And for what? So the rich could make their petty wishes? I gulp down my disgust. Play the part. All right, what is it? Kit asks with more than a hint of humor. Nothing. I pause and peer up at him. What do you mean? He laughs deeply. You are fighting the urge to tell me off, aren't you? I blink at him before sputtering. How do you... You do this thing where you scrunch up your nose before you start arguing. It's a dead giveaway. I open my mouth, and for once, no words seem willing to fall out. He smiles as he watches me struggle before I finally clear my throat and say, Fine. The reason for me scrunching my nose, I throw him an annoyed glance I likely shouldn't have, is because of all the shillings. When I don't say anything more, Kit urges, Go on. Well, money like this could feed dozens of Ilyans in the slums for weeks, months even, I say evenly. And yet, here it sits, wasting away for people's wishes. Kit's eyes flick to the fountain, and he frowns. You're right. I'll see about having it removed and distributed. My heart leaps against my chest. Really? His frown flips into a wide grin. We made a deal, remember? You keep looking at me, and I'll keep listening to you. I almost snort before turning back to the fountain. I remind myself that this small victory with the shillings could mean nothing. In fact, removing and distributing them in the slums may never happen. But he's listening, and that is progress. It's potential. I bring my face close to the surface, trying to see through the ripples to the shillings beneath. How much money do you think is down the... My words are cut off by the cold water that rises from the pool to meet my face, splashing me lightly. I straighten and whirl to find Kit laughing, his hand slightly raised at his side. That damn dual ability of his. You were right, I say with a deceptively sweet smile. I will stab someone for less than just sneaking up on me. Perhaps for even splashing me in the face. He raises his hands innocently and chuckles, a wide grin lighting up his tanned face. Hey, you're the one who called me an ass earlier. My mouth falls open at the realization that I had, in fact, said just that to the future king of Ilya. The look on my face has him laughing even harder, and I don't think before dipping my hand in the water and thoroughly splashing him. That was a mistake. I should know better than to start a water fight with a duel who could drown me if he liked. After Kit has finished thoroughly splashing me, water is dripping from my hair and clinging to my lashes. And then I'm laughing at the sight of us, sopping wet in the middle of the castle garden. I'm still wiping sticky strands of hair off my face when I say, "This was not a very fair fight." Chapter 34. Payton. The familiar stench of loot fills my nose, and I suppress the urge to gag. Home sweet home. The long, wide street is cast in shadows, cleared of merchant carts and beggars for the night. I pass clumps of homeless huddling together in the adjacent alleys jutting off loot, gambling or using their powers to entertain themselves. It's nearly midnight already, and with a huff, I pick up my pace. Because tonight, I have somewhere to be, and questions to be answered. Tonight, I'm finding the resistance. It wasn't hard to slip out of the palace, especially since Lenny doesn't guard my door at night. The Imperials that litter the palace weren't a problem either, seeing that I'm used to sneaking around unseen. I crept out through the garden and followed the road by the bowl all the way back to Loot, since I haven't the slightest idea how to ride a horse, and figured tonight wasn't the best time to figure it out. I pass by the alley where I first met Kai and smile at the fond memory of robbing him blind. Good times. I push thoughts of him away, not allowing myself to get distracted as I turn down a familiar street. My street. The one where the small, white shack of a house resides. I swallow the lump in my throat at the sight of it. I haven't been back here since I fled from it 5 years ago, when it was covered in my father's blood, and I was smothered by grief. But this is where the boy's note led me, the one I now know is part of the resistance. I'm suddenly standing at the door, breathing hard as I stare at the familiar cracks and dents in the wood. Here goes nothing. I take a deep breath and pull at the door. Locked. But bolted doors are child's play to a thief. I pull out my father's dagger and pick the lock with ease, seeing that he taught me that skill with this exact door and this exact blade so many years ago. The door swings open, creaking on its rusty hinges as I step through it. I clutch my dagger tightly while I cautiously peer around my old home. It looks completely ordinary, completely the same. The old furniture resides in the exact same spot I left it in, the cracks in the walls still climbing up to the ceiling. Cobwebs cling to almost every surface in the house, looking as if someone hasn't been here in years. Maybe I was wrong. Well, well, well. Look who the plague dragged in. I have my knife raised, aimed, and ready to throw at the figure standing in the shadows behind me. In the darkness, I see the shadowy outline of hands raised in surrender. My eyes adjust to the dim light, catching a flash of red, tousled hair falling over a freckled forehead. Lenny? I whisper, my mouth falling open. He takes a slow step forward, and his familiar brown eyes and grin come into focus. The one and only. His voice sounds as light and kind as it always is in the palace, but that doesn't mean I drop the blade still raised in my hand. I'm confused, disoriented, and in need of answers now. What is going on? I demand, staring at him suspiciously. Why are you here? Is he part of the resistance? He must be, but... Yeah, he rubs the back of his neck sheepishly. We have a lot to fill you in on. I blink. We? Yes. He points a finger to the creaky floorboards beneath our feet. We. I just stare at him, waiting for an explanation on what the hell is going on, why the hell he is here, and who the hell he is with. His gaze flicks between my face and the knife still ready to fly into his heart. And once you put the knife down, I'll show you what I'm talking about. He speaks slowly, as if trying to calm a crazed animal, and I'm sure I look just like that. I lower the knife slowly and nod, once. He puffs out a relieved breath, his shoulders losing some of their tension. Plagues, you really are terrifying sometimes, you know that? I mean, sure, I'm the Imperial here, but man, you could probably whoop my ass. Oh, and I just might if you don't tell me what is going on, I say, teeth clenched. So demanding. Lenny sighs, gesturing for me to follow him. On second thought, you might be better suited as a royal than an Imperial. Aye, Princess? He tosses a smile over his shoulder as he turns towards the study. My father's study. The room where he was murdered. I feel like my lungs are being crushed, my heart being squeezed as we step into the room. Ordinary. Completely ordinary, just like me. There's no blood soaking the floor or the chair he was murdered in. It's gone. A pang of sadness hits me as my eyes sweep the room, trying to find the chair he loved to read in so much. I'd sit at his feet or on his lap as he told me stories about better worlds, ones with magic and heroes and girls who didn't have to hide who they truly were. Lenny walks up to the leaning bookcase in the corner of the room, littered with books covered in dust and cobwebs. I'm about to ask what exactly he's doing when he suddenly grips the edge of the bookcase and pulls. I watch, awestruck, as the wooden shelf slides easily to the left on some sort of track beneath it, and behind lie descending stone steps. I have never seen that before. Lenny flashes me another grin, gesturing towards the darkness that lies behind the bookcase. Ladies first. What I should have done was laugh in his face before making him go down the staircase first, but I've thrown caution to the wind and hastily replaced it with curiosity. The sound of my footsteps against the stone echoes as I brace a hand on the grimy wall and continue down into the darkness. When I'm standing on smooth, solid stone at the bottom of the steps, I stop. Lenny runs right into me, nearly running me over. Ow, shit. Sorry, I didn't see you stop. Yeah, well, that's because we can't see anything, I snap, assuming I'm glaring at his face in the darkness. Now that I can help with. A female voice coming from the darkness makes me jump, and I collide with Lenny all over again. I hear the flip of a switch and the hum of dim lights turning on. Then I'm blinking, trying to understand what I'm seeing. I'm standing in a large, damp room, filled with tables overflowing with charts, maps, and supplies. Notes and papers are plastered to the walls, making for an odd sort of wallpaper. On the other side of the room, there are mismatched chairs scattered in a circle with papers thrown on top of them, and messy cots are lining the far wall. And, arguably the most important detail, there are people standing in this room, one of which I immediately recognize as the boy I stole from, the same one from the ball. The male to his right is older, around the age my father would be, with straw-colored hair and pale blue eyes that watch me closely. The girl beside him looks only a few years older than I am, a mere copy of the man beside her. His daughter.
If you've got kids in the UK under 16, you need to hear this. What would they do if your income suddenly stopped tomorrow? Because for most families, the answer is nothing. If something happened to you, an illness, an accident, the unexpected, would your partner be able to keep up with the mortgage, the bills, the school runs, the weekly shop? Most families couldn't. But right now, UK parents are locking in up to £300,000 in cover from just £10 a month. That's less than £1 a day. No medical exams, no home visits. You can be approved from day one, even with some health conditions. It only takes less than a minute to get started. So just click the button under my video right now and take the short assessment on the next page. You'll get your price today for your cover. Your family's worth it, and the peace of mind starts today. So tap below now to get started. Your family's future could depend on it.
When is it time to end a relationship? And when is it time to fight for it?
Oh, the
million-dollar questions.
Right.
It's tough because we live in a time where people think that, the grass is always greener on the other side, and that, if this relationship isn't perfect, I'll just go find someone else and it'll be even better, which is foolish because we all know, it takes a long time to meet a good person, not just a good person, but the right person for you.
Ultimately, it's being able to look at myself in the mirror and know I did everything I could. I fought. I did the steps. I did what was necessary. I did the best I could. But ultimately, I need to walk away from it. And I think that that's a really good compass to use. It's making the right choice, not just for yourself, but for that other person, to show them that love in the way by respecting their wants and respecting yourself in the process too.
Then my eyes land on the smiling girl next to the light switch. Her olive skin seems to glow against the rich black of her waist-length hair, and her deep brown eyes watch me curiously. "Sorry to keep you in the dark," she sighs. Literally. The girl crosses her arms over her orange tunic, taking me in. Lenny's bat ears heard the door open, so we plunged ourselves into darkness, just in case. Lenny gives her a sarcastic grin before he casually answers my unspoken question. I'm a hyper. I have enhanced senses, which some people like to make fun of, even though it saved their life a few times. I give him a confused look. You're a mundane? But Imperials are normally offensive or defensive elites? He cuts in with a sigh. Trust me, I know. It took forever to climb up the ranks to get to the position I have. Well, that only slightly cleared up one of the dozens of questions whirling around in my brain. Okay, can someone please tell me what the hell is going on? Lenny shakes his head beside me, murmuring, So demanding. I wondered when you would find your way here. It's the boy from the ball who cuts in before I can kick Lenny's ass like I promised. I mean, after you stole half my silvers and the note in my pocket, I figured you would show up eventually. He's amused. Took you long enough. I open my mouth, only to find that I'm speechless. Plagues, what is going on? The blonde man clears his throat before saying, Finn, would you grab Peyton a chair, please? We have a lot to catch her up on. Finn nods and does just that, adding another chair to the circle of seats awaiting us. The four strangers walk over and plop down without another word. There's a hand on my shoulder one moment, and the next, I've twisted it at an odd angle out of pure instinct. Shit, Peyton, easy, Lenny gasps. I blink, look at what I've done, and drop his hand. Sorry, I mutter. I'm a bit on edge. He's rubbing his sore arm, looking at me cautiously. So, note to self, the princess doesn't like to be touched. Don't call me princess, Lenny. Okay, so the princess also doesn't like to be called princess. I fix him with a glare, but he rushes on. All right, look. You're going to hear a lot of information tonight. Information that will shock you. So just... His eyes search mine. Listen, okay? Of course. I'm a great listener. He snorts. We'll see about that. Why are you here? I ask abruptly, my voice calmer than I currently feel. Patience, princess. I'll tell you that soon. He slowly puts a light hand on my shoulder, eyeing me to make sure I don't snap his wrist. When he deems himself safe, he gently guides us to the circle of chairs and sits beside me. The blonde man is seated across from me, sighing as he looks me over. You must have taken after your mother, because you don't look much like your father. My heart stops, my eyes widening at his words. But you have his spirit, his will. That much is evident in how you showed up tonight. I open my mouth to let the questions loose, but he cuts me off. And I see you still have your father's dagger. Good. He nods to the knife still clenched in my fist, the handle now slick with sweat. My dear, you have... His eyes bore into mine so intensely that I fight the urge to look away. So many questions. For starters, I'm Callum. Welcome to the Resistance. Well, a small part of it. We've been patiently awaiting your arrival. You've been awaiting? I start. Good listener, my ass, Lenny mutters beside me. I cut him a look that makes Callum chuckle and Lenny squirm, eyeing the dagger still clenched in my fist. I promise I'll answer all of your questions, Payton. But first, let us make our introductions. This is my daughter, Mira. He gestures to the blonde girl beside him, who barely offers me a smile. And this is Lena. He nods towards the girl with the raven hair, falling elegantly down her back. You are smaller than I thought you would be, Lena says with her head tipped to the side. Now I'm even more impressed you survived the first trial. Her tone isn't mocking, but rather curious. I'm tougher than I look, I assure you. The strongest weapon a woman has at her disposal is that she is often underestimated, I answer with a small smile. And I wield that all the time. Lena's face splits into a beautiful smile that lights up her features as she says to no one in particular, I like this one. We're keeping her, right? She's not a dog, Mira mumbles with a roll of her eyes. And you've already met Finn, Callum cuts in. Finn gives me a quick wink, and I almost scoff. Now, I have a lot to explain in only a short matter of time, so I'll get right into it. He takes a deep breath. Your father and I were very close. And yet I've never seen this man in my life. And I know you don't know who I am. His words cut into my thoughts. And that is because your father kept me a secret. Just like he kept the Resistance a secret from you. My head is spinning, and I'm suddenly thankful that I'm sitting down. But your father didn't just know about the Resistance. You see, the Resistance has been around for nearly a decade now, and Adam was one of its original leaders. That is the very reason we are still in this house, using it as a headquarters like we did when he was alive. Why did he keep this all a secret from me then? I ignore the look Lenny shoots me at my interruption. Callum heaves a sigh. It wasn't just you he kept the Resistance secret from. In those beginning years, we lay low, silently spreading word of our cause through those we could trust. It was dangerous for you to be a part of the Resistance, so we wanted to wait until you were older to join. He pauses before quietly adding, but he never got the chance to tell you. And when we found your father, you were gone. I manage a slight nod, swallowing the lump in my throat before I ask, is that why the king killed him? Because he learned of his role in the Resistance? A look of confusion crosses Callum's face as he continues to stare at me. The intensity in his gaze is almost unsettling before he looks away and nods slowly. That is what I assume, yes. I swallow, hoping I would feel lighter after finally discovering the reason for my father's death after years of guilt and guessing. And yet, I don't. You, and most of Ilya, are only just now beginning to hear of us because we have grown, Callum continues. Grown in size and strength. We have kept the Resistance quiet for many years now, while we gained more members and found more ordinaries. But the king is having difficulty containing us now. Difficulty keeping us under wraps and under control. So where are the rest of you? I quickly add. Who are the rest of you? We are everywhere, Mira says, but her piercing gaze speaks volumes. It's clear she doesn't trust me any farther than she can throw me. Callum calmly continues. During the purging 3 decades ago, more ordinaries remained in Ilya after the banishment than originally believed. They hid in secret, right under the king's nose. There are Resistance members spread all over Ilya, since it is obviously both unsafe and unpractical for us to all reside in one area. Even I do not know where or who they all are. We have leaders assigned to different areas of the kingdom, allowing us to spread information to Resistance members smoothly and without suspicion. Word travels fast when the leaders converse and pass on information to the members in their section. And that is why we met here tonight, Lena says brightly, to discuss plans and then make our sections aware of them. I blink at them all. You are all leaders? I mean, you're so young. And handsome, Finn sighs. But yes, we are some of the leaders that were able to make it tonight. Honestly, we are just glorified carrier pigeons who pass along information secretly so the Resistance can stay united despite not being able to gather all together. I'm no carrier pigeon, Mira huffs. I'm not sure why we're talking about birds, Lenny sighs. But yes, they oversee informing Resistance members in certain sections of the kingdom. It's no simple task. Ordinaries are still killed constantly, and if information of who is part of the Resistance gets out, even more will die. So, I glance between them. Are you ordinaries? Finn grins. I sure am. Same here, Lena says proudly. I stare at the two of them, these people who are just like me, just as ordinary. My eyes snap to Mira as she says, and I'm a silencer. Callum cuts in before I can spew any more questions. The ordinaries in Ilia tend to adapt the ability of the hypers, since it is a fairly easy power to pose with. At that, Lena shoots Lenny a smug look. When ordinaries find us and join the Resistance, we help them build a life, teach them how to survive. He offers me a sad smile. Not everyone had a father like yours who taught them to actually become powerful. Your psychic ability has been trained into you since you were a child, and it's the most convincing cover I've ever seen. He pauses for a moment, collecting his thoughts. As for who we are, well, obviously, most of us are ordinaries, but we also have elites on our side. The Fatals, I breathe. Yes, he seems to stiffen at that title, and it seems you have already encountered one. The silencer I fought in the alley comes to mind as I say slowly, Was he... Yes, he was a Resistance member. Callum holds up a palm, silencing the apology I was about to utter for taking one of their members down. There is no need to apologize, Peyton. It was Micah's own foolishness that got him caught. He was always a hothead, Lenny mutters, and a dumbass. A reckless dumbass. To think he could take down the prince, the future enforcer, without consequences? My eyes dance between the five of them. Do I get to know exactly why this Micah is a reckless dumbass? Because he saw the prince already weakened, and his anger got the best of him, Mira says, her expression void of sympathy. Long story short, Prince Kai killed someone very close to Micah, consuming the silencer with rage and a need for revenge. When he saw the prince in that alley, worn out and preoccupied, he took the opportunity to try and take him down. She pins me with a stare. But you took him down instead. At the time, we didn't know who you were, Lenny adds. We put the pieces together when we saw your name on the banner and loot, and saw you at the interviews. I thought you were dead, Peyton, Callum says gravely. And then you suddenly showed up in the trials, and we had found Adam's daughter. Well, you found us. Who would have thought that Adam Gray's daughter, the kid of a Resistance leader, would be the one to rob me blind and find that note? Finn says with a sigh. The note that led you right to us, and right back to your own home. He looks up at the ceiling and smiles to himself. When I saw you at the ball, saw you recognize who I was, I knew it wouldn't be long before you came and found us. I swallow, unable to move on from the prior topic. I'm sorry about the silencer, about Micah. I can't help but feel guilty, seeing that I'm the reason he was caught. Do you know if he is still alive? Callum's expression grows grim. We aren't sure, but if he is, it likely won't be for much longer. He continues before I can try to apologize again. And there is no need to feel guilty, Peyton. Micah was his own undoing. He takes a deep breath before casually carrying on the conversation. Now, as I was saying, the Resistance is made up of both ordinaries and elites, including the silencers, mind readers, and controllers. Since the king also tried to kill the Fatals off, and has continued to do so, they want justice as well. Other elites have joined the cause for their own reasons. Those who care enough to think about it don't buy into the idea that the ordinaries were suddenly banished because of a disease. So the resistance members don't believe the ordinaries are weakening the elites, I say, watching as Callum nods. Does anyone have proof to use against the king and his healers? Callum's eyes search mine before he sighs. No, we don't have proof. Lenny adds, we are just the Ilians who care enough to realize that it doesn't add up. Ordinaries lived with the elites for decades before the purging. And even now, they hide under the king's nose and live right alongside the elites with no complaints of any abilities dwindling. He sighs. But just because the king and his healers said the ordinaries were diseased, most of the elites won't think twice if it means their powers and lives are at stake. I nod slowly as my brain is suddenly flooded with questions once again. What exactly is the Resistance's goal? And what could I possibly offer them? I open my mouth to ask this, but Callum beats me to it. The Resistance is finally ready to take action. And unlike what the king has said about us, we are not radicals who kill for the sheer fun of it. We want justice. We want the truth to be told. We want ordinaries and the fatals to live in peace with the rest of the elites once more. Not to be hunted and killed for things they cannot control, simply because the king wants an elite society and is willing to lie about ordinaries to get it. So that is our goal. That is our cause. And that's exactly what I want. Exactly what I've hoped for all my life. To be accepted and free. I realize it then, how badly I want to be a part of this. How badly I want to help and make a difference. I think I've been waiting all my life to find such a purpose. What about the ball? I blurt out. Why attack at the ball? Lenny and Callum exchange a look before the latter sighs and says, our attack was as much of a surprise to us as it was to the guests. I'm reminded of how unprepared the few resistance members looked, how they were trying to fight their way out of the ballroom. It was never part of the plan, Lenny interprets as I raise an eyebrow, urging him to explain further. So basically, the ball was the perfect cover to sneak in a small group to search the castle, using the festivity as a distraction. And, well, let's just say they got caught. My gaze slides to Finn. You were there and escaped. What happened? Finn clears his throat. I won't bore you with the details, but a guard found me in a back hallway during my search, and thought it was rather suspicious that a serving boy was so far from the festivities. So, when he asked prying questions, naturally, I lied my ass off. He ducks his head, shaking it at the floor. Only after he dragged me back into the ballroom did I discover he was a bluff who could sense each of my lies. But Finn wasn't the only one caught. Mira cuts in, looking grim. Turns out, there were a lot more Imperials crawling around the castle than anticipated. Finn heaves a heavy sigh. We were all equipped with low-damage bombs, knives, and suicide capsules, though we weren't planning on having to use any of it. But we discreetly wore our leather armor and had our masks as a precaution in case we needed to fight our way out. And that's exactly what it came to. An Imperial was the first to set off one of our bombs, not knowing what it was, and that's when the ballroom broke out into chaos. We tried to escape, but elites started fighting us, and all we could do was try to fight our way out. He pauses, swallowing his sorrow. In the end, we all used the bombs while those who were caught used their suicide capsules. Lena's pretty face is pinched with grief. Her next words hollow. Our secrets are too valuable to lose, and they were too loyal to divulge them. They knew they would lose their lives anyway. The room goes silent, as if taking a moment to honor the lives of those they lost. We weren't intending for the kingdom to learn of the resistance that night, or in that way, but it seems fate had other arrangements, Callum says softly. Sadly, sometimes it takes martyrs to show people that there is something worth fighting for. I let the information sink in, sitting silently before voicing the question that has slithered its way to the forefront of my mind. What was it that you were searching for? It's Lenny who offers me an answer. As an Imperial, I've been informed that the final trial will be held in the Bowl, and that is where we are going to show ourselves to Ilya. Now, the castle is riddled with secret passageways and tunnels that lead in and out to various places. We need to find the one that leads right under the box in the arena. Securing the king is the trickiest part of this, so we need to use the element of surprise against him, while the rest of the resistance can come through the many tunnels leading into the Bowl. My brows knit together in confusion. How do you know there is even a tunnel leading into the waiting room beneath the box? I don't remember seeing a door down there before the interviews, but then again, I suppose I was rather distracted. Because I've seen it, Lenny says simply. I open my mouth, but he quickly cuts me off. And that's all good and dandy, except that the tunnel doors only open from the inside, and I have no idea where the other end of that passage is. Oh, I say softly. Lenny's laugh is dry. Yeah. Oh. I look between all of them expectantly. So what, you need me to find the tunnel that leads there? Their response is practically in unison. Yes. I choke on a laugh. If Lenny hasn't been able to find it yet, I'm not sure Yeah, well, it would be a hell of a lot easier if I had the future king wrapped around my finger, Lenny murmurs under his breath. I shoot him a look as Callum slowly says, Your relationships with the princes are valuable. Specifically, your connection with Prince Kit. He leans forward, urging me to understand. Peyton, I believe you hold far more sway over that boy than you give yourself credit for. I'm not sure he's right about that, but I nod slowly, taking in his words. You want me to use Kit to find the tunnel. Bingo, Finn says. He has already begun to trust you, Callum insists. So use it. What was it you said earlier? The strongest weapon a woman has at her disposal is that she is often underestimated. So let him underestimate you. He is a means to an end. Make this boy bow if he must. His eyes are locked on mine. Just get us into the bowl. We've been planning this for a long while now, and it will be the first time that most of the resistance will be in one spot. So this needs to go right. I nod again. I can do it. I will do it. There's a beat of silence before I ask. What exactly is the plan? It's really quite simple, Callum says. The majority of us will finally all gather together, and will show the people of Ilya who we are and what we have to say. Show them that we are not a threat, while also reminding them of who they have been killing for decades. The king is going to have to either admit his lies about the ordinaries, or simply give us our freedom. And you are going to help us do it. We need you to find the tunnel, Lenny urges. I'll be there to help with anything you need, of course, and we will check back in soon with Callum. So Callum is the head leader? Yes, I suppose you could call me that, though none of us really have titles, Callum says coolly, running a hand through his tawny hair. Plagues, Yes, I am a mind reader, Peyton. My breath quickens. He's been reading my thoughts the entire time. He's probably reading them right now. Yes, I have been reading your thoughts the entire time, and yes, I did just read them again. I don't try to hide the look of betrayal on my face, which only softens his expression. I'm sorry for invading your thoughts, but I had to make sure you were truly on our side, truly willing to help us. Get out of my head. He almost smiles. So very headstrong, just like your father. But now that I see you are trustworthy, I will leave you to your thoughts. Lenny clears his throat and stands, offering me a hand. We should get going. We have a lot of work to do, and you need to spend as much time with the future king as possible, so you can find us our passage. Yeah, I still need to figure out exactly how I'm going to get that information out of him, I admit. Flirt? Finn chimes in at the same moment Lenny says, bat your eyelashes or something. I snort before Lenny waves me over to the stairs. Come on, we need to get you back to your room. I nod to the small group before me. Thank you. You gave me something to fight for. And with that, I turn away, heading for the stone steps behind Lenny. Peyton? I spin on my heel to see Callum watching me. Your father would be proud.